Welcome to Group 4. This is SHEAN, the group leader. In this presentation, we shall be showing you the daily number of coronavirus cases, aka COVID-19, in South Korea, Japan, and Indonesia. We have decided to start our COVID research from 1st of January in 2021 until 21st of May in 2021. The longer the period selected, the more the daily cases data collected, and the more persuasive the calculations of central tendency is. Without further ado, let us jump into our main statistical softwares utilized in this project, Microsoft Excel, developed by Microsoft Corporation, and our programming language for statistical computing. First thing first, allow me to import the data set of daily new cases in South Korea. Okay, I have finished importing the data set. Next, allow me to import the data set in Japan and Indonesia as well. Wait a second. And as you can see, I managed to import the data for these three countries. Hence, what are these data for? What? Indeed, these are raw, ungrouped data. The local health authority will report the daily new cases and the data will be uploaded to Worldometer, a reference website that provides counters and real-time statistics for diverse topics. In this assignment, we are requested to do summary statistics, in which we have to determine the central tendency, dispersions, and skewness among South Korea, Japan, and Indonesia. We can classify the data into ungroup and group data. First, let's talk about ungrouped data. When the data has not been placed in any categories and no aggregation or summarization has taken place on the data, then it is known as ungrouped data. Ungrouped data is also known as raw data. I will be computing the summary statistics from ungrouped data. Previously, I believed the students have only heard about Ogive for group data. But do you know that we can plot the Ogive for ungrouped data as well? Let's create a new column for less than cumulative cases in South Korea, Japan, and Indonesia. Bear in mind that we assume 0 case before 1st of January in 2021. So the second cumulative frequency would be 1029 cases. To ensure the cumulative frequency is correct, let us sum up the total cases and we get 73,938 cases. We did get the correct cumulative frequency for Japan and Indonesia as well. The values are tallied with each other. Speaking of the Ogive graph, both less than and more than Ogive graph increase and decrease linearly. Looking into the Ogive of Japan, the gradient is the steepest during the beginning and the end of the observation period, whereas the gradient for the middle period increases steadily. Eventually, the Ogive graph for Indonesia has the steepest gradient. In short, what does the gradient mean? The steeper the gradient, the greater the number of positive cases detected in the country. This indicates that Indonesia has the highest rates of patients getting infected, followed by Japan in second, and ultimately South Korea. For your information, South Korea government has implemented some effective measurements to maintain the number of positive cases detected without fully locking down the entire country. Shani will be presenting these implementations in her presentation shortly. The measures of central tendency allow us to determine the typical numerical point in a set of data. The data points of any samples are distributed on a range from the smallest value to the highest value. Measures of central tendency tell us, as researchers, where the center value lies in the distribution of data. What about dispersion? Measures of dispersion are important for describing the spread of the data or its variation around a central value. Two distinct samples may have the same mean or median, but completely different levels of variability, or vice versa. Let me show you the summary table. The similarity for these three countries is that the mean is the largest, while the mode is the smallest among the central tendency. This is because the value of variables, which is the daily new cases, are larger, therefore increasing the mean, or vice versa. As the value getting larger, the error would also increase. Hence, as you can see, the standard error for Indonesia is the largest, meaning to say that the data for Indonesia is the most uncertain when it comes to predicting the future trend of daily COVID-19 cases. I'm pleased to invite my partner Ik Hong to present the graphical representation in South Korea.
Hi, I am Lee Hong, a collaborator in charge of analyzing the statistical study of daily new cases in Korea. The number of observations is 141 days based on 31 days from January, 28 days from February, 31 days from March, 30 days from April, and also 21 days from May. Besides, our number of class is 9, and maximum value and minimum value is calculated by using the Excel formula, which is max and min, by selecting all the data in the number of daily cases. Class use is 80, which is rounded up from 82.222 and found by using the formula of range divided by k. The frequency table is constructed with the first one class interval from 281 cases until 360 cases, which is minimum value of 679 cases that can fit in. And the last class would be the 1001 cases to 1080 cases, which is the maximum value of 1029 cases that can suit in. Lower class boundaries are computed by deducting 0.5 from the lower limit, whereas the upper class boundary is computed by adding 0.5 from the upper limit respectively. The most challenging in this assignment would be determining the frequency. That is the number of days that fall in each interval. It is hardly to handle as many as 141 data within a short time frame. So therefore, by using the data analysis function in Excel, we could easily acquire the frequency for each class by inputting the upper boundary as known as bin in Excel. The concept is by sorting the data according to the boundaries. Cumulative frequency is also prepared with more than 141 cases to 0 case and less than 0 case to 141 cases. We have determined the relative frequency, midpoint, frequency times midpoint, and frequency times midpoint square that will be performed in the dispersion calculation afterwards. So let's discuss about the mode. Without performing any calculations, I could roughly estimate that the mode should be in between 441 cases to 520 cases, as the most frequency has occurred in this interval. To find the median, we have to determine the position. Firstly, since the position is 70.5, the median should be between 441 cases until 520 cases as well. And how about Japan, SIAW?
Hello, Dr. Muhammad FAUZEE. I'm KUAN, a data analyst scrutinizing information using data analysis tools. The meaningful result we pull from the raw data could help the health authority to make important decisions by identifying various facts and trends. I'm going to introduce Japan as the country that I have opted in this assignment. My observation days is starting from 1st January until 21st May, and the total number of observations is 141 days. The maximum number of daily cases is 7,855 cases, which occur on 9th January in 2021, and the minimum number of daily cases is 679 cases, which occur on 9 March in 2021. The number of class K is required before formulating the frequency table distribution. We can calculate it through Sturge rule. Number of class K that I acute is 8.0924, and I round off it to 9 with the class width of 800 cases. Now, for the frequency table distribution, the first step is determining the class interval. I decide to choose 600 cases as the lower limit of the first class. Thus, the first class interval is from 600 cases until 1,399 cases. Bear in mind the class interval from 1 case up to 599 cases is just for the illustration of Ogive. Therefore, the class weight is not essential as it would not affect the calculation for central tendency and dispersion. Next, we compute lower boundaries by deducting 0.5, while for the upper boundaries, we use upper limit plus with 0.5 for each class. Then, I will determine the midpoint of each class by finding the difference between upper limit and lower limit and dividing it with 2. After that, I shall calculate the frequency by applying the data analysis approved as proposed by Hong just now. We use data analysis to determine it. Next, I will compute the less than cumulative frequency and more than cumulative frequency for the less than and more than Ogive. To get the relative frequency, the frequency of each class should be divided by 141, and then the summation of relative frequency is 1. Fx and Fs squared are calculated to determine the mean, variance, and standard deviation. But after that, I need to add on regarding the purpose of contrasting polygon and histogram that Hong has forgotten to point out. Frequency polygons are a graphical device for understanding the shape of distributions. They serve the same purpose as histogram, but are especially helpful in comparing multiple sets of data. Sometimes, it is beneficial to show the histogram and frequency polygon together. This is vital as the distribution of the graph could ensure us estimating the skewness correctly before performing the calculation. Additionally, without performing any calculation, I could roughly estimate that the mood should be between 600 cases to 1,399 cases as the most frequency has occurred in this interval. To find the median, we have to determine its position firstly. Since the position is at 70.5, the median should be in between 2,200 cases until 2,999 cases. How about Indonesia, Sinyu?
Hi, I'm Lin Xingyu, the Secretaries and Data Analyst of Group 4, recording and writing the meeting minutes before and after our meetings. This is to ensure every process flows well, as every members have to report their current progress to Jeans in every meeting. Oh yes, I will be research Indonesia's roll out these assignments. The numbers of observation is 141 days, starting from 1st of January until 21st of May. Since we are required to collect data with same observational periods to assure the duty is fresh and square. Moreover, the schedule is calculated based on 1 plus 3.3 times log 141. The number of class is 9. The maximum number of daily cases is 14,518 cases, which occurred on 30 January in 2021 years. And the minimum number of daily cases is 2,385 cases, which occurred on 15 May in 2021 years. The number of class case is required before formulating the frequency table distribution. We can calculate via start rule. The number of class cases that I acquired is 8.0924, and I roll off is to 9, with the class values of 1,315 cases. Now for the frequency table distribution. The first step is determining the class in the wheel. I did this to choose 2301 case as the lower limit of first class. Thus, the first class in the wheel is from 2301 case until 3650 case. Bear in mind that the class in the wheel from 951 case to 2300 case is just for the installation of Ogive. Therefore, the class wheel is not essential, as it will not affect the calculation for central tendencies and dispersion. This is because the frequency will be zeros and the calculations for each element, including main point, Fs and Fs squared, will be zero also. Next, we gain lower boundary by deducting 0.5. Well, for the upper boundary, we use upper limits path with 0.5 for each class. Next, I will determine the main point of each class by finding the difference between upper limit and lower limit and dividing it with 2. After that, I should calculate the frequency by applying the data analysis approach as proposed by Yi Hong just now. We use data analysis to determine it. Next, I will compute the less than cumulative frequencies and more than cumulative frequency for the less than and more than Ogive. To get the relative frequency, the frequency of each class should be divided by 141, and then the summation of relative frequency is 1. Fs and Fs squared are calculated to determine the mean, variance, and standard deviation. COVID-19 has put an intense spotlight on statistics. The number of cases, deaths, and infection rate are reported by government and media outlets daily around the world and discussed by everyone. So, on one level, it appears that statistics have never enjoyed such recognition as a critical tool for supporting decision making and providing public accountability. Yet, official statistics enjoy a much more dichotomous existence, as simultaneously we see examples from around the world where statistics are ignored by public leaders and replaced with misinformation and fake news. Today, in the midst of the data revolutions, official statistics has competing with myriad sources of information. all claiming to be authoritative. Size in average of being drawn out by a sieve of around levels. Moreover, without performing any calculation, I could roundly estimate that the most should be in between 5001 case to 6350 case, as the most frequency has occurred in this interval, which is 41 days. To find the median, we have to determine its positions first. Since the position is at 70.5, the median should be in between 5001 case until 6350 case, as well coincidentally. By the way, Shani, could you please analyze which country have the highest mean? I believe Indonesia will be the one, but why?
Hello everyone, this is Tan Shani, a researcher studying the central tendency in the statistical field currently. My job is to collect, organize, and analyze the opinions and data to solve problems, explore issues, and predict the trends in the following pandemic wave. I will be sharing my point of view of the reasons behind causing a country to have a higher mean of cases as compared to others. Based on the calculations, we found out that Indonesia has achieved not only with the highest mean, median, and mode, but also the highest variance and standard deviation, followed by Japan and lastly South Korea. A measure of central tendency is a summary statistic that represents the center point or typical value of a dataset. These measures indicate where most values in a distribution fall and are also referred to as the central location of a distribution. You can think of it as the tendency of data to cluster around a middle value. In statistics, the three most common measures of central tendency are mean, median, and mode. There are four perspectives: country management strategies, demography, economy, and social. In terms of country management strategies, South Korea remained the lowest number of the daily new cases detected among the countries chosen. The main reason is because of the high self-awareness towards COVID-19 pandemic among the Korean citizens. They are required to wear on their face masks for all public places such as grocery stores, shopping malls, bus stops, and so on. Despite a rapid growth of cases early in the global timescale, South Korea has brought the transmission of the causative agent of COVID-19 under control with less stringent national social distancing policies relative to countries such as Indonesia. Restriction of laws regarding public gatherings remain less than 10 people since 1st of January 2021, causing the infection rate between the Korean citizens to be lower, although the population density is high. However, the lockdown policy in Indonesia was long overdue.
Oh no!
After a year of living with coronavirus, Indonesia is going backwards. In February, as the coronavirus victim count rose steadily in the countries such as Japan and South Korea, Indonesia maintained that there was not a single case within its borders. As the government steadfastly refused to instate social distancing, cancel events, or start mass testing, local communities started to feel differently. Based on the observation on various social networking sites, such as YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, among these three countries, Indonesia has the lowest awareness towards the restrictions and measures proposed by their government. For instance, some of the Indonesians are not wearing masks properly, like this, and like this, or even wearing a reused mask all the time, decreasing the personal hygiene level drastically. Consequently, they are easier to get infected as compared to Korean and Japanese. When a virus is widely circulating in a population and causing many infections, the likelihood of the virus mutating increases. The more opportunities a virus has to spread, the more it replicates, and the more opportunities it has to undergo changes. But depending on where the changes are in the virus genetic material, they may affect a virus properties, such as transmission. For example, it may spread more or less easily, or severity. For example, it may cause more or less severe disease. From the raw data in the daily new cases sheet above, we can perceive that the daily new cases for South Korea, Japan, and Indonesia have been increasing starting from the end of the March as the result of the emergence of a new variant. South Korea has stepped up efforts to block the spread of the variant cases in the country, strengthening quarantine measures for arrivals from India in light of the spike in infections there. Without further ado, regular flights between South Korea and India has been suspended since March last year over virus concerns. In Japan, the government is working with the countries around the world to make sure that they increase the proportion of sequencing intelligently. It is the same going in Indonesia. The two cases of the Indian variant known as B1617 were found in Jakarta, while the minister said a variant first discovered in South Africa was also detected in Bali. The mean of the cases increases because the variant has a higher transmission and reproduction rate. If the authority could not control the dissemination of a new variant, the entire country is likely to having a new wave and the healthcare system will collapse shortly due to insufficient facility such as oxygen tanks. From the perspective of the density of population, South Korea has the highest population density, following by Japan and Indonesia. Contact tracing is an effective disease control strategy that involves identifying cases and their contacts, then working with them to interrupt disease transmission. This includes asking patients to isolate and contacts to quarantine at home voluntarily. South Korea took an aggressive approach to contact tracing early in the outbreak. First, they scaled up their network of contact tracers. Second, they gave these workers access to the data beyond what they might to be able to learn from a typical patient interview. Third, they used public communications to empower citizens to assist the health system with contact tracing. Breaking the chain of the transmission is the key to containing the COVID-19 outbreak. But in Indonesia, contact tracing remains weak due to the problems ranging from an insufficient number of the tracers to people's reluctance to open up to these workers. Unlike Korea and Japan, most of the citizens own a smartphone and they could easily register themselves whenever and wherever they have been. Another point resulting to poor contact tracking system would be the extreme poverty issue. Citizens living in the rural area do not have sufficient funds to own a mobile gadget. The government should overcome poverty issue as it plays a vital role in handling the COVID-19. Poor contact tracking system would result to more people getting infection, thus escalating the mean cases. According to the World Health Organization, starting with people in priority groups, including the health workers and the senior citizens, is recommended to get vaccinated as they are high-risk category. In South Korea, although the government established the vaccination policy slower compared with the other two countries, which is on 27th of February 2021, the vaccination progress is much faster compared with Japan and Indonesia. According to the graph of the share of people who vaccinated at least one dose against COVID-19, South Korea has the highest share among the countries investigated, which is approximately 7.5% of share, followed by Japan and Indonesia which has an approximate value of 5.5% to 6% of share. From here, we can see the effectiveness of the vaccination policies established in each country. These are the reasons resulting South Korea to have the lower daily cases and lower mean of cases. So, Jen, since the PCR test could directly affect the daily new cases, how about the PCR test performed by each country?
Okay, no problem. According to the graph of the total COVID-19 PCR tests conducted versus the confirmed cases for our observational period, we can comprehend that the steeper the gradient of the graph, the better the capability of the country in handling the pandemic. In this graph, we managed to observe that the gradient for South Korea would be the steepest, and showing Japan and eventually Indonesia. South Korea is said to undergo high amounts of PCR tests, but retaining the lowest daily new cases. The basic reproduction number are not of South Korea would be the lowest, Japan in second, and Indonesia the highest. This indicates that South Korea is the best in coping with their medical and healthcare system. They also inaugurate drive-through rapid diagnostic tests to break the chain, inaugurating in lower mean of cases over Indonesia with limited resources. What is pandemic all about? It's about money. Hiya. Economically, South Korea is expected to be one of the better performing countries throughout the pandemic. Part of the explanation for this success is that South Korea was able to avoid some of the severe long-term restrictions, such as lockdowns or business closures, that have led to troubled economies in many high-income countries. In fact, the country has never activated its highest level of restriction, which would have brought gatherings with more than 10 people, closed gym, and high-traffic businesses. Alternatively, the Japanese government has provided financial support to the Japanese, which covers more than 50% of the salary lost. In Indonesia, the government only covers less than 50% of the salary lost to the citizens. They only provide little relief to the citizens, such as freezing financial obligations during COVID-19 pandemic, stopping loan repayments, preventing services like water from stopping, or banning evictions. Hence, this worsened the situation from restricting the citizens to stop their work because they could not survive from economic difficulties. They need to keep on working to provide a financial income and ensure the living to themselves and their family as well. In my opinion, I ponder that the government should enhance the National Labour Act to secure employees' welfare and prevent workstation infection significantly. This is because workstation infection is a high-risk hotspot that will promptly spread the virus if any of the employees or managements fails to comply with the standard operating procedures (SOPs). As the reality of the novel coronavirus disease has taken hold worldwide, foreign media are frequently reporting on panic buying occurring in global regions such as the US and Europe. In South Korea, listen carefully. However, customers hardly see empty aisles at supermarkets. Many experts say that the main reason panic buying is practically non-existent in South Korea is the country's highly developed delivery system. Contradictory, in Japan, the citizens are having panic buying of surgical masks and toilet paper. Seriously? NANI? Whereas in Indonesia, the citizens are having panic buying of foods and medical supplies, causing both of the countries having new clusters in supermarkets, as it is hardly to maintain social distancing at limited space. Indeed, the citizens should follow the instruction and believe in government that the supplies are sufficient. Panic buying would not only lead to supply chain disruption, but also new clusters that might cause higher mean of cases. From the social perspectives, our work in data had computed Stringency, Containment, and Health Index. Stringency Index is a composite measure based on 9 response indicators, including school closures and workplace. Closures and travel bans are rescaled to a value from 0 to 100, where 100 is the strictest. From this graph, we could perceive that South Korea and Japan are the countries which lower the stringency index as the time going on. But due to failure of controlling COVID-19, Japanese government has to reinforce the restrictions again. Most essentially, Indonesia is the only country which increased the stringency index as the time going on. This might probably be due to smoking habits by most of the citizens. I'm not saying everyone, but most of them, they do smoking. Technology limitations could be one of the drawbacks during this pandemic, especially in Indonesia, as most of the kids do not own a mobile gadget. They have to attend physical class, which increase the chances of getting infected. That's a different story in South Korea and Japan, as even in schooling time, the students are also using mobile gadgets to access the lectures in physical classroom. Geek Hong will be sharing his thoughts about the distribution of skewness he obtained.
Person's coefficients of skewness could be computed by two formulas, which are 3 times mean minus median divided by standard deviation and mean minus mode divided by standard deviation. In fact, both values calculated are positively regardless of which formula is applied, 0.4805 and 0.3837. Respectively, both formula attributed skewness is greater than 0, so the data is positively skewed and also known as skew to the right. The skewness is positively skewed because of the cases in Korea still high, leading to a larger mean of cases. The high case might be caused by South Korean government has lowered the epidemic prevention response and further the relaxed business restriction in various places. Due to the factors such as increased fatigue and difficulties in livelihood faced by self-employed individuals, the government has decided to lower the level of response to the epidemic. Restaurants, cafes, gyms, KTVs, and other business establishments in non-capital area are no longer restricted in business hours. The opening hours of schools, barbershop, large supermarkets, movie theaters, and internet cafes in metropolitan area have been lifted. The lower of the epidemic prevention response levels and all the restrictions increase the chances of residents to get infected by COVID-19 due to a high exposure. SIAW, may you give some comments about the distribution skewness in Japan?
We have used two sets of formula to calculate the skewness. Based on the calculation, all the skewness calculated are positively skewed since SK is more than 0. If the formula 3 times mean minus median divided by standard deviation S is applied, skewness of Japan is 0.5498. Conversely, if the formula mean minus mode divided by standard deviation S is utilized, skewness of Japan is 1.0666. The distribution of the skewness for Japan is positively skewed. This indicates that most values are clustered around the left tail of the distribution, while the right tail of distribution is longer. This may cause by the larger number of daily cases is concentrated in January and getting decreased from February to the beginning of April, and getting serious again from late April to May according to the graph of Skewness distribution. This is because Japan is one of the most outstanding countries in handling COVID-19 in the beginning of 2021. Therefore, the effect takes place by preserving the new cases getting reduced from February until beginning of April. Nevertheless, due to the loosened policies, the government failed to deal with the crisis, resulting the Olympic event has to be extended again. Recently, I have heard a news reporting that Indonesia might be following the footsteps of India, which is the worst country coping with COVID-19. Is that so, Sinyu? May you elucidate the circumstance in Indonesia?
We have used two sets of formulas to calculate the skewness. Based on the calculation, all the skewness calculated are positively skewed. Since the skewness is more than 0, if the formula trace time bracket mean minus median divide standard deviation is applied, skewness of Indonesia is 1.0229. Conversely, if the formula bracket mean minus mod divide standard deviation is utilized, skewness of Indonesia is 0.6117. The distribution of skewness for Indonesia is highly and positively skewed. It indicates that most values are clustered around the left tail of distribution, while the right tail of distribution is longer. This is because the Indonesian government has no choice, because it's very challenging to establish a perfect tracking system to detect the new cluster, and they have to continue strengthening the law, although it seems ineffective. The stringency in test for Indonesia is the only country increased with time. Another reason will be the number of PCR tests done by the health authority have the highest confirmed new COVID-19 case, but the test itself is not performed at the maximum stage, meaning to say that the probability getting in front is the highest among the 3 Asian countries, therefore increase the mean of case.
Vaccination policies and educating the citizens to raise awareness towards battling COVID-19 pandemic are the only solutions to flatten the curve, so that all the people around the world could see the bright future and back to normal life. In a nutshell, we would like to express our deepest appreciation to everyone who has assisted us in contributing ideas and resolutions in this report. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.
Stay home, stay safe.
Stay home, stay safe.
Home, stay safe.
Stay home, stay safe.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.